I want to talk to an agent. And I would sit there and shout at the phone, agent, operator, and pound on this door. So if your chatbot is that robotic, not understanding the background or the sentiment or whatever, I think that will frustrate customers. If when I call, it knows from my phone number what my history is. It knows that I've called 5 times this week over this particular issue. It changes the discussion. It's no longer just a script. It's now actually interacting.
Hello, everyone. Today, our guest is Miles Goldstein. Miles is a seasoned support leader with over 20 years of experience in B2B SaaS. Most recently, he led mission critical and federal support at Okta, where he built out premium support services for large enterprises and government customers. He spent his career scaling support teams at companies like Amobi and Marketo. He's currently between roles and exploring new opportunities while continuing to share his perspective on support leadership. Thanks, Miles, for joining us and really excited about the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Miles, as I love doing with all of these conversations with the guests that we have on this podcast, I'd love to start with your journey of getting into customer service and support, exactly how it happened, and then, how it transpired over the last few years.
Sure. So I was in college and working at a data center, and it was just a job. But when my local analyst left his job, he recommended me, and I got his job working as a support analyst for that company that I'd become an expert on. And that's when it went from just a job to a career. And from there, I stayed with that company, got into management, and then moved to the Silicon Valley and started working in a bunch of different software companies along the way. So it's been a great career, but it started just by needing a job.
And was there a point, Miles, where you thought that, wow, this looks like a great career, and this is what I want to do for a fairly large amount of, time?
Yeah. So what I love about support is I love puzzles. I love just solving puzzles. And in support, you can solve a dozen puzzles a day and go home. In development engineering, I've known a lot of development engineers. You can work 18 months on a project that may or may not ever see the light of day. But support, you go home every day with 12 wins under your belt and solving all those puzzles.
Makes sense. That's very interesting, right? And I can totally relate to that, having done both, being a developer and having been, you know, someone doing support for Hiver when we actually started the company. That gratification is definitely addictive. Absolutely. Would love to, talk more about your previous role at Okta, right? I mean, exactly what did you join Okta to do, and how did your role evolve over the roughly 3 years you were there, and what did you build there?
Sure. So first, in my job search, I saw multiple roles coming up within Okta support and applied for a couple of them. And just looking at their postings, I figured they're growing. There's something going on here. I want to be part of that. So I actually reached out to their VP HR and said basically that stuff. I've seen all these roles. How do I get in? And she interviewed me, and I got the job. Um, I inherited a team that was doing dedicated support for their premium customers. It was either one dedicated engineer with one customer or two customers for that one dedicated engineer, 2 levels. We actually doubled the size of the team and the program while I was there. And it was exciting. I got to work with some major companies. Okta being identity management, there's a lot to that. I mean, one of your customers is FedEx, for example. FedEx pilots can't log in, they can't take off. If they can't take off, commerce stops. I mean, just think of how big FedEx is. So while it's not people lying on the floor bleeding to death, this is still it's not just a product. If I can't log into my accounting tool for an hour, no one's going to really lose their jobs or lives over it. But the identity management stuff goes far deeper, and that's what interested me about that particular role, is working with those major accounts on a mission critical piece of software.
Makes sense. And was this, like premium support that you'd offer for a price, or was this generally bundled into?
No,
And if, yeah,
it was very expensive. For a full person, it was $330,000, or for half, $165,000. But if you think about the margins and the burden rate of over $200,000 per head, that's pretty normal for that kind of offering. It was the kind of offering that a $5 million, $10 million ARR customer would be very interested in, and the 300,000 is noise on that kind of invoice. A $10,000 customer doesn't need that level of support, and they're not going to. pay 330,000 for it.
Absolutely. And of course, what you did then would have a significant revenue and top line impact. But other than that, right? I mean, what other strategic impact was part of it, right? Was there product feedback loops? Was there a voice of customer program? Is there any way that you also played a part in all of that?
Yeah, first, being those large customers, I had kind of a golden pass with my engineering escalations. I had one situation at one of our banks, I'm not going to list their name, who was having trouble syncing their data with ServiceNow, another CRM tool. And I got engineering involved because this is a huge customer. It's not just a sync problem. There's something else going on. And to get engineers on a daily call with the customer is actually a pretty good feat for people in support. You know how fun that could be. But engineering was great. And what they discovered was there was a flaw in how we were pulling data. We were pulling a large amount of data. And the way that the SQL works, you take the first 1,000 records and you process them, then you go back and ask for another 1,000 and so on, but we weren't sorting the data. So each time we went back, we were getting a different set of data. So our
Mhm.
offsets were wrong and missing records. And from that lesson, engineering learned you have to sort the data when you select it. But that was a long thing, which only because it was my major account and we had that great relationship with engineering that we learned this really hidden but bad bug. So to me, that's a kind of nice benefit to that kind of relationship.
Makes sense. And from what I understand, right, there was a massively technical aspect to what the team was doing, right? It was pretty much engineering, right? But of
Yes.
course, support also involves, if I may say, software aspects of, how you handle a communication, how you make sure that you calm the nerves when they need to be calmed. And so how do you juggle these two, right? I mean, you would have these deeply technical people, basically solving puzzles, but you'd also have this deeply human aspect of support that also needed to be taken care of.
Yeah, that is very difficult, as you know. Um, I find technical skills. If someone's got technical aptitude, you can teach them some specifics, but that customer attitude, that personality, that need to help, that curiosity, that's innate. So I hire people who like to the puzzle solving. I like them to dive in and question things and have that way of talking to customers, that diplomacy. One of my top guys, I said he had the bedside manner of a pediatrician, and that is to me a high compliment. I mean, but you've got to have that curiosity and that ability to talk to customers and a technical aptitude. I won't hire. I mean, I love engineers, but I wouldn't put most engineers on a phone with major accounts. It's just they're too black and white. They're too straight to the facts.
How did you go about hiring for this match? I mean, did you have a template, a method? Because this sounds tricky, right?
Yeah, actually, a couple of summers ago is when I doubled the size of the team. We hired 12 people over a 2 or 3 month period. But I worked closely with our HR recruiter, and as I was rejecting resumes, I was telling her what I liked and what I didn't like. And then on my team, we had people set up for certain roles. For you're going to do the technical interview, you're going to do the this other aspect of the product. You understand IAM, and we all had roles in that. But as a result, we were able to process a large number of candidates quickly. We had it tuned to recognizing who are the top 10% and focusing on them. And of those, what are the criteria by which we accept or reject them? Again, it started with, would you put this person on the phone with one of your top 50 accounts? And if the answer is no, if they're not already that kind of like customer success managers, you've got to have that customer facing skill and the technical aptitude. And then from there, how deep can we take them into the engineering side because we're doing developer support in this role?
You have to also understand how you interface with customer success and account management on this, right? I mean, was it really a pod that you had, or in all of these roles, right? All of those aspects also become very important, right?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the question there.
What was the interplay with customer success and account management on stuff like this?
Oh, yeah. Because of the nature of our, the top accounts and all that, they all paid extra. There was a dedicated customer success manager on each of my specific accounts. And I always described it as we were two legs of the same stool. It worked very well. We set up relationships so that everyone kind of knew where the responsibility passed back and forth. And there was overlap, right? If my team was in the middle of a critical issue, we're talking to the CSM because they're out there with the customer. They can help set expectations and tell us back what's the real pulse of the customer. If they're out doing something and they sense there's something wrong that the customer hasn't reported, they can tell it to us and we can help fix this before the customer gets to the point of I have a problem, because at that point the aggravation starts. So we worked really well with the communication back and forth. When you have that few accounts per person, the account team, the extended account team, has that relationship and that constant communication, as opposed to your general support delivery where you've got 5,000 customers, you've got 200 reps, and you only talk to them when they call. You don't remember their name next time, which unfortunately is a reality for some large support orgs.
Makes sense. And was all of this, that you did was reactive, or you had a process to actually be more proactive about it, where the signals that you're looking at?
Yeah, that's what's nice is we were able to be somewhat proactive. I say somewhat because we're still support. At the end of the day, it's break, fix, and how to. But say we know of a situation another customer is having, and we look at it and say, gee, my customer is doing similar things. I can get in front of it and work with my customer to try to prevent it. Uh, with normal support, you have got to wait for workarounds and stuff. With the premium support, we're working with the customer. We're passing information back and forth from engineering, getting those workarounds out there quickly. If a customer has a major event planned, one of our customers was a very large retailer who a couple of times a year they had this big event where all of their customers called in at 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning. We'd get in front of that and make sure that for a week we were testing load and increasing what the number of interactions they were allowed to have in a given period, and getting them to the point where they weren't going to experience critical failures 8 a.m. on Wednesday, proactively getting in front of that and preventing a crisis. And to me, that's huge value. To me, that's where they got their $330,000 worth of values off.
Absolutely. I'm sure they would have definitely appreciated that, right? Makes sense. Would love to also talk about a movie, right? I mean, I understand that you're a turn, which later became a movie,
Yeah.
and would love to also have you draw parallels between what you did at a movie with what you ultimately ended up doing at Okta, right? I mean, what was common, what was not common, what were new? That would be very interesting for us to understand.
Yeah, so Amobi, I ran all of global support rather than just the major accounts team. I had an offshore team in Chennai, so I had 75, 80 people in Chennai, and that was my largest offshore team that I've had the pleasure of managing. That team did a number of things. They not only were frontline support for how to and break fix, but they also did a certain amount of managed services, hands-on keys for advertisers to post their ad campaigns. My back end, I had a very small tier two group, like 7 people scattered globally, and we would train that frontline people. We would take the hard escalations, but that was all of global support. And once again, there, because it was all of global, I had what I believe was an excellent relationship with the customer success organization. Again, two legs of the same stool. Both of those last companies, it worked better than any of my previous companies because I think we jointly figured out the recipe of how to do the handoffs. And it's not pull the pin on the grenade and toss it over the wall. It was, hey, we are trying to solve a customer problem. We're all in it for this customer. And that worked well. So the similarities were the good field relationships, the good engineering relationships. With engineering at Amobi, we actually dramatically improved how support escalates to engineering, to the point where I was gold on percent of bad escalations, and we were constantly driving that number down. Engineering worked with us to create run books and checklists for that frontline support. When you see this kind of problem, here's the 12 steps and what you need to collect before you send it to engineering. Don't send it to engineering, waste their time. 3 weeks later, you're told we need more information. That wastes the customer's time. So we jointly fixed that. We had the cooperation on all ends to make the process smoother and better. And that was a lot of fun.
So that sounds like a fairly interesting ecosystem, right? You had these 70 people who were, probably your frontline support people handling all manners of queries. Maybe sorting out a lot of what was coming in, and then deflecting or kind of escalating some of those to your 7 8 support specialists that were scattered, as you said, all over the globe, right? And the dynamics of exactly what was escalated and what was not, I think, was extremely important. So that is the read that I get, right?
Yeah. And again, having a global team, is a wonderful thing. Almost all of the teams I've managed have been global, but I have people in the UK, people in APAC. This team did not have anyone in South America, but just APAC and Japan.
Great. So, please tell us more about, how you built, managed, and, trained and coached this 70 people offshore team, right? Because that would have been extremely difficult and challenging.
Yeah, so my senior guy, amongst other things, I eventually made him a manager. But once a year, he'd go out and spend 2 weeks in Chennai with the team. It helped firm up the relationship. It helped them observe how they were doing what they were doing. He would take them out for a couple of team building events while there, and he'd teach them any of the new stuff that's come along in the product, make sure that they're following our processes. When I first got there, I learned how they were doing some of their case management, and they were doing it in a way that frankly is abhorrent to me. They were using a spreadsheet instead of the call tracking. But I stepped back and thought, it's working for them. Why would I break something that's working just because it's not my way? Eventually, we did migrate from the Salesforce Classic to Salesforce Lightning. And in doing that, I built their spreadsheet into forms in Salesforce so that they can now retire the form and just use Salesforce instead, which made my life more pleasant. But you don't break things that are working. You focus on things that need focus first.
Makes sense. Any other ideas on tooling, right? I mean, this is a very interesting one where you kind of continue to live with the spreadsheets,
Yeah.
just by kind of transforming them into tools within Salesforce, right? But from Okta too, right? I mean, any insights that you had from tooling that would be very interesting for us.
Yeah, it's tooling. So I know you're a case management CRM company, so I used to work for a couple. I've implemented dozens of CRM tools throughout my career and back and forth between various products. Uh, there comes a point where you start to understand what are the core basics. What are the workflows? What mail in, mail out, assignments, and rules and whatnot. But it has to work for the team. You've got to give them what they want. I did one early in my career, very bad CRM implementation. It was, in my opinion, a bad tool to begin with, but I didn't understand how important it was to get user buy-in every step of the way of implementation. So I kind of implemented this thing in isolation and then presented it to my team, and they fell off their chairs laughing. It was just that awful. But so in subsequent months, I've included the team in designing the workflows, designing what things we measure, designing how things look on the screen, stuff that the support analysts use every day should be front and center. You shouldn't have to scroll down to get to the point where you enter your case note. That case note's got to be front and center. That's where they live. As a manager, I look at different things, but I can scroll down. I can run reports. Uh, I also learned things like you don't measure things that you're not going to take action on. If you've got a multiple choice list, don't put more things than the granularity you care about. You either care, is it a how to, is it a bug, is it a whatever? Then don't give 37 choices. People will end up just always clicking the first one or taking their favorite. So I learned a lot of lessons in generic how to implement a CRM or case tracking tool. And that's played well as I've implemented more and more throughout my career.
Hmm. Interesting. So just on the subject of reporting, right? I mean, how you would have looked at reporting in a movie might have been drastically different from how you would have looked at reporting in Okta, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like the at Amobi, I had what I called my 100 megabyte spreadsheet, where I took weekly reports out of Salesforce, put it into my spreadsheet, and did pivots and slices and dices. What's the most common problem? Who's the biggest customer? Who's the busiest analyst, and so on and so on. So I could go to engineering or to my boss or to sales, whatever, and say, look. This customer is a low ARR customer and they're sucking up a lot of time. Can we give them some training? They need coaching. That's why they're calling so often. I helped identify a couple of problems in the product that if we solve this problem, my caseload can go down by 20%. If the caseload goes down by 20%, think of how much more work my team can do before we pass it to engineering. So those stats, to me, reports don't always answer questions. They tell you what questions to ask next. So why are we spending all this time on reporting? Because there's this flaw in the report tool. Okay, well, let's get that fixed. And all those cases go away. So to me, that Amobi was that. For Okta, it was a little smaller in that I was, focused on my group of customers and making sure that they were getting what they needed.
Makes sense. With AI, etc., right? I mean, do you think getting insights such as the ones that you just talked about at a movie, right? I mean, has it gotten easier? I mean, would you have to do lesser pivots than you would have to do at that point of time?
Yeah. Those insights are they're the feedback that you get, going through the environment. If you're driving, you see cars, you see kids, you see traffic lights, you see weather, and those are all constant inputs that tell you what to do as the driver. As a manager, it's the same thing. Those reports are one set of that input data to tell you what to do, as are, feedback from the field, feedback from customers, direction from upper management, and so on. Um, so all that helps you just focus your time on what matters. What are the problems that need to be solved? Um, I know you guys are very into AI. I haven't had the pleasure of playing much with AI as a support leader, but I think AI has the ability to help bring some of that information out. I don't need that 100 megabyte spreadsheet because I can have, some AI tool reading the information and telling me what that feedback is, telling me where those issues are, so I don't need to go dig through it every week.
And generally on the subject of AI, right? I mean, what did you see happen in the last 3, 4 years, right? While you were at Okta, did you see any changes coming? And when you look at how AI is going right now, can you connect the dots with your career and see exactly where it might have, played a very important role?
Yeah, so AI under that acronym to me is new, but we've been working toward this for a dozen plus years, right? So, I was big into KCS, knowledge centered support and knowledge management, and having a good customer portal which can consolidate information from various sources and give a rational set of answers to customers. To me, that was the predecessor. It was taking static information and presenting it, as opposed to AI, which can take static information and consolidate and give feedback on it. But that kind of um, tool to me was the beginning of assisted support, right? Um, Same with case routing rules. We used to have to sit there and write very complex rules. If it's this thing, this time of day with that character, we route it to this thing. Well, okay, so we built automation. Back then it was automation. Now you can put intelligence around it so it can learn and do that easier and better. So to me, that's part of that brave new world we're in. But I think we've been working towards it for a long time. We've been climbing a mountain, and now we're finally past that certain point where we get a much better view.
Absolutely. One thing that I wonder is in B2B context, right, where you, I, we all play. What is your thought on chatbots and chat agents which actually do the conversation with the customer, right? Not as tools that help you analyze and understand stuff and get insights, but actually do interactions with customers. Do you think we are at a point where you would be very comfortable with a chatbot talking to your customers?
When done right. So I'm really on the fence on this one because I've seen wrong. I used to hate IVRs or ACDs, the voice routing stuff, right? Press one for this, press two for that, and no, I want to talk to an agent, and I would sit there and shout at the phone, agent, operator, and pound on the zero, and pound. So if your chatbot is that robotic, not understanding the background or the sentiment or whatever, I think that will frustrate customers. If when I call, it knows from my phone number what my history is, it knows that I've called 5 times this week over this particular issue, it changes the discussion. It's no longer just a script. It's now actually interacting. So to me, if done right, it can be useful and still at some point say, I see you've called 5 times and it's not solved it. I will connect you to an agent. Maybe the chatbot knows enough at that point to do that rather than have me punch zero a whole bunch of times. So I think we're getting closer to that. Um, Again, I think right now, helping agents consolidate information is one of its strengths. I think helping customer portals consolidate things is one of its strengths. I still don't think we're at the point where AI can totally independently generate an answer to a new problem. I think it can find answers to existing problems quite well, but for a new problem, there's still the problem of hallucinations that show up in the news often enough, and I know that's probably the bane of your existence is fighting that perception of things. Um, but to me, it's on its way. It's got some great uses now, and it just has to be done right. It has to take context and history into account, and then it's no longer just a script.
Makes sense. Very useful, Miles. Lastly, any advice that you have for people who are starting out in their customer service careers, right? Maybe who are just a couple of years in and have, a career ahead of them.
And so I think I wrote this on your questionnaire that you have to wear many hats and change them quickly. You're part techie because that's what brought you into tech support, but you're a teacher, you're a parent, you're a counselor, you're a psychologist. I mean, you're a diplomat. All these different things that you've got to take with you. You can't just it's not just question answer. Customers, when they call, they have a problem. You need to fix the customer as well as the problem, and that takes a whole variety of skills. As I told you, for me, I love the puzzle solving. So when someone comes to me, either as a customer logging a customer support case, or being a manager or director, a staff member coming to me with a personal problem, or working cross functionally, trying it's that solving puzzles, solving business problems that excites me. You've got to find what excites you and know that there's other parts to the job. You've got to be that calming influence on the customer. You've got to be the reliable source that's going to get back to them with their answer. But you have to know which hat to wear when. One of my customers a long time ago, when I first got started in support, called and I said something about, oh, you've got to change your config value to, I said, no, why don't you try changing this value to this other thing? And she said, what do you mean try? Is that going to help or not? I said, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I know this is going to solve your problem. This value needs to be that. Sometimes you've got to be very black and white, and sometimes you've got to be a bit more interactive. But my sitting there trying to use waffle words when it was a very black and white answer, it upset her. She taught me you got to be better
Absolutely.
than that. Yeah.
Great. Great. Thank you, Miles. That was very useful and I really enjoyed the conversation. And I'm sure our audience should too. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed our time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.